And what you see is that humans are exactly working the same as how trees are working in a forest. But once you are starting to manage the forest, then you very rapidly overregulating, and the forest will be desert. And that's the same happening with the people. And people are organic as well. So people don't know if they are alive tomorrow. And a tree doesn't either. And I think that could be a frightening scenario, but it could also be an adventurous scenario, right? Let's see what the conditions are tomorrow. And I think that's a new world we should be embracing much more. That when we want to have real freedom and real liberty, we should be running away from certainty and running away from security as well, because somehow we cognitively changed the notion of certainty and freedom. We think they are the same, right? When you are certain, you're free, but they are the opposite. When you're free, you don't have certainty. There are a lot of risks attached to freedom. But when you're certain, you need to give away freedom. Otherwise, you cannot be certain. And I think we humans are born to live in freedom, live with adventures, and with uncertainty.
All right. We are live, my friends. Thank you for joining me today for another episode of the podcast. I am very excited for today's guest. This is honestly just a perfect example of why it's so awesome to have a podcast, because we have Marijn Poels here with us, who is a documentarian filmmaker, and someone on Nostr several weeks ago introduced me to your movies. It was the Primordial Code was the first one. And so I just went and watched that movie with dinner one night, and it completely blew my mind. It was extremely cool. And just the fact that I can just reach out to this person on the internet and say, I want to talk to this guy, and just talk about, his filmmaking, his movies. That's so amazing. And I'm sure that you can feel that way as well, because having the platform you do, you get to just go reach out to all these different people, these fascinating human beings, to just discuss things. And this is, as both of us talk about the downsides of the technological rise in society, this is definitely one of the benefits, the fact that we get to connect so easily. So Marijn Poels, really appreciate you coming by, man. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, I love to be here. And exactly what you said, it's true. It's amazing. It's a great time to be alive, because we're coming. It is so easy to reach out people these days because of technology, to be honest. And it's not that I'm only invite myself to podcasts, but also to regular people who just wanted to have a chat, which I think they are interesting enough for me to listen to, because as a filmmaker, I'm very carefully listening to people. That's my job, and I'm trying to get a lot of inspiration from just normal people. So whether it's a podcast or just normal regular people who just wanted to have a chat, have a good story, I'm in for it. And you know, in these days when I was young, you talk about 20, 30 years back, you had heroes, and heroes were untouchable, unreachable. They had managers. Before you couldn't even email them, or and nowadays I think we are stepping in a time that we don't need heroes anymore. We just need people on normal, regular level, interacting with people, and function as exactly how it should be. And I think a documentary maker should be within society, in between the people, and feel what's going on in society, and certain try to capture the zeitgeist. That's a German word, and I think in English as well, of the moment. And
Yeah,
whether that's my story, whether that's my opinion, that's not so important. The most important thing is that you embody the call of the people in your films. And so I think that's a wonderful time to be alive. That I have the platform and the reach and the name of being a documentary maker, and people want to talk to me. And I have the same feeling like you. I remember I started with the completely independent filmmaking around 8 years ago, before I did a lot of other filmmaking stuff. And I emailed Professor Freeman Dyson in Princeton, New York. And Freeman Dyson is a legend in the science of physics. He invented the Dyson sphere. He worked with Einstein. At that time, he was 93. He sadly passed away 2 years ago, and he just emailed me back. Yeah, you're welcome. And I thought, wow, I can talk to a living legend. And that was for me a moment like well, wow, why this is happening, and it's all happening with a reason, I guess. So yeah, it's great to be on your podcast and share inspiration, and you're looking forward.
absolutely. And there's so many interesting dynamics that emerge when, like you said, the fall of this idea of these heroes that are like the bona fide thought leaders that everyone just looks up to and sort of follows along. I guess another word we could use is like they're just the leaders that people follow. And there's different perspectives to look at that, because there were certainly great leaders throughout history that led people to do great things. And, when there's some hierarchy in society, we see that can lead to a lot of efficiency and a lot of really cool things being done, great civilizations being built and so forth. But at the same time, when things aren't aligned properly and there's more evil forces that slip through the cracks, as we see in the modern world, uh, these leaders could perhaps be leading us in a bad direction. And when that happens, it's good to have this very decentralized approach where anyone can just make a movie, start a podcast, and just spread their message. So how do you see those two uh, different dynamics, the one being the leader and a bunch of followers, and the other where anyone can create a platform? Like, how do you think those affect society?
I think it's affecting quite heavily. What you said, I think it's right. I think people do need leadership, right? Whether that's a government, whether that's you can name it elites or whatever. Uh, because a society without elites is a beheaded society, I guess. Then it will be completely chaos. I think those people who, just like me and you and just normal, regular people on the street demonstrating, they are necessary in times when leaders stepped over the borders of humanity. And then, the people make it clear that, they stepped, they went too far, and I think that this is the cool movement we have. And once we are happy and satisfied, we go back into our caves and have our lives, and so yeah, I think it's important. And I think you see that during history, with all the eras, the Mayas, the Incas, the Egyptians. I think the pharaoh, the 18th pharaoh, no, the 18th dynasty. It was Pharaoh Amenhotep II, and he was the one who built the greatest dynasty in the whole Egyptian history. And he made up a lie actually about the gods of the sun. So you need to offer something for the sun god every morning and every night, and otherwise the sun will not rise. That was his lie, and all people believed in it. And you can say it was a lie, but it was a way to get people lined up to build something great. So that means, believing in a lie is not a bad thing. When everybody believes in the same lie, you can build great things. But then some priest came in and they, proclaimed another faith. And then the faith crumbled and the dynasty fell, right? So, and I think that's the same movement over and over again, that when leaders goes a bridge too far, another religion, another belief, another lie will come up, and an empire will fall and start again. And I think that's where we in right now. So I think the most healthiest form of government will be, I think this is pretty much what we do. Listen to the people and try to play with. We are sort of the we are the speakers, and we should be very close and near to our followers to really understand what's going on. And when we are too far away from our followers, they will not spend any money anymore to donate me. So our falling, so fast. So I need to be very sensitive in, what I'm doing, and not being the prostitution, not doing exactly what they say I need to do, but it's a combination of listening to the people, but also try to tickle them a little bit, because I made the first couple of movies were about climate change and energy policies. They were critical films about that, or polarization. And then suddenly I made Primordial Code after the film about COVID. So that's a huge step and a huge different topic. And somehow I was afraid that I should lose a lot of my network. But then at the end I thought, no, this is I guess what people need, because there's a lot of soulless people, asking for new leaders or new gurus. So I thought Primordial Code is all about finding yourself again, the power in yourself. So I thought maybe it's a completely different step, but it's in exactly the same way of acting in terms of what I think people need. And a lot of people, I think it was 30% of my followers disappeared, but over 80% came back, new followers. So I think this is the great thing. We are the clowns in society as well, right? We can hold a mirror for the king, but also for society. And I think that's a great method to keep a society vital and awake. And this is, the cool thing is that when I started making these films completely independent, and I mean, I'm fan funded, so no government grants, no fundings whatsoever, just little donation from people around the globe. And I started with that in 2016 about climate change, and I didn't have a clue at all what I was doing. But I made a film which was very controversial in that time, because I questioned. No, I did not question climate change. I just talked to different perspectives, right? And I just invested all my money in that film. So I was kind of bankrupt with the idea, when it's a good film, it will pay back. But it didn't, because it was too controversial and I got canceled. And I thought, oh boy, I lost everything now. But what I didn't expect was, and probably I was one of the first filmmakers in that situation. There were a lot of people who said, what happened to you is so inhuman. I'll spend a bit of my money for you, and there were a lot of people who were doing that. So a completely new way of setting up my living was formed very organically without a plan. And so people took care of my finance to, so that I was able to produce a second film and a third film. And, it's the eighth film. So, and that's a structure you cannot make it up before, right? It happened. And that's one of the coolest things, I guess, what happened is that there was a system which was censored, which was depressed. And out of that, new energy arose, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you've heard of the phrase value for value before. This is one that we
Yeah,
use. I have you heard that before? That's familiar?
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah,
Yeah, that's so I think that originally birthed from my neck of the woods, the Bitcoin world, just basically this idea that, you know, all information and content is meant to be free and it should be voluntary. Basically, going back to the busking model of you're just
yeah,
creating your art out in the open, you don't put any walls around it, and you just let people give what they feel it's worth. And so many people out there think that this is like too much of a pipe dream that people would never do it, but I mean, it seems like from your model, it's working very well for you, and that's
absolutely.
awesome.
It's totally fine. I learned a lot about when you go to a soccer game, for example, in Europe. Soccer in Europe is like is a religion. Um, you pay at least $130 to get into the stadium, right? See your idols playing football, and not many people can afford that. And when you look at the sport, cycling, like Tour de France and all that kind of stuff, you can be at the fingertip of your idols when you're homeless, right? Because other people who can afford to pay the event will pay it, like merchandise or whatever. And I think that's the coolest thing you can do, to set up something for people, and everybody is able to watch it, but there will be enough people who pay for it. And it's all about honesty, because the only thing I'm asking is at the end of the film, whether you liked it, when you like the film, consider a donation. That's all I'm asking. And what I see is that 10% of the watchers will do spend a bit of €5, €10, sometimes €100, which is enough to make a second film. And this is great. And so I don't. It's very voluntarily whether you think or not, and I think that's great. I never dreamed that this could be reality, because I'm coming from a world of making money and try to be sure that the money is there in advance, prior to the film. And nowadays I thought, no, I just do what I think I need to do, and let's see if that's the right thing. And it turned out to be the right thing every film again.
Awesome. Yeah. I'd love to dive back into your story a little bit. I think that's a good transition to just talk about your origin story. So you come from the Netherlands, and
Mhm.
I I can't remember when the exact date of your first movie was, but I'm curious what life events and upbringing led you to deciding to become a filmmaker and get into this business.
Oh, that was it was a bit of a coincidence, actually, because I never learned for being a documentary maker or film or photography. I'm coming from I was a gardener, actually. That's what I was. I learned for it, And then I traveled a lot, like you, and I saw the world, and I filmed just with a handycam, nothing special. And that was probably 20 years back, a bit more, 25 years back. And then I had a good job, and then once I said to my dad, I quit my job and I will become a filmmaker, because I traveled poverty, conflict zones, and I wanted to translate these stories into valuable films so that people at home could understand how the world looks, in other places. And I, sent emails to organizations working in developing countries with poverty, human rights. And I said, I will make a film. You pay the the flight tickets, and I will make a film for free. And I did that 2 times, and it became successful, the films. And then things were rolling out of it, and once I got introduced, ladies and gentlemen, filmmaker Marijn Poels, and I thought, wow, yeah, I'm a filmmaker. That's what it was. It was my passion to translate these stories from development countries, from people who are living really in the margins of society. And my phrase was always, giving a voice to the people who normally don't have a voice, because I thought that's the most interesting voice you can hear, because these peoples are in misery and poverty, and they know what to do, how to come out of the misery. And what you see is that politicians are deciding it. So I thought that was a good way of approaching. So I did that for 12 years, I guess, and then I did it I made over 50 documentaries in 12 years, so that was quite a lot. And then I worked for TV, for cinema, for foundations, and then I traveled the world 8 times, and I thought, wow, yeah, this is a format, I can travel the world again, but I saw it, I documented it. There's not much more I can do. And what I see is that Europe faces a lot of problems. Why traveling to Africa and report problems over there? Meanwhile, Europe is, on a Titanic. So that's what I did, but there were no fundings. So I tried to reach fundings, but there weren't. And I decided, okay, I will spend my own money to make a completely independent film, because I noticed that even though I was free to do what I want, but you're attached to an organization or a TV station, so you are colored in some way. So, and I thought, okay, now I'm going to make a real 100% independent story, without the end in sight, and with that I mean, I'm starting with a focus, but I'm not knowing where it's ending. And there was a story about climate change. The uncertainty has settled, and I spent 80,000 euro in it. So that was quite a lot. It was my own money, and I rented out a cameraman for a year and a half, and I just started asking questions about windmills. From what are these things doing here, and you see farmers changing from crops to energy crops. And my question was, is that sustainable? And then you bumped into the question of CO2, climate change, all that stuff. Yeah, and then the whole story started with being real independent, and a lot of consequences were attached to that, because the premiere was in Berlin, was 500 people in the audience. And after the film, and I'm coming from a left progressive, kind of liberal type of life, and these people were in the audience as well. And when the film was done, it was completely silence, as if they had seen a ghost. 4 or 5 minutes or so, and that is pretty long time for an ending of a premiere. And then I stood up at the stage and asked people other questions, and people get angry and mad and aggressive. And I thought, oh my God, I touched something. So by that time I was canceled within a week, and I got threats. It was not a nice period for me to be alive, because I was touring with the film as well. And I remembered, protesters were standing in front of the cinema, 50 people or so. They wouldn't let me in the cinema, so the police needed to come, guided me into the cinema, and things were getting pretty aggressive. And then I stopped screening, because I thought, okay, this will go wrong when I'm continuing. And I was at home, and I read the sentence somewhere in a book. I don't know what kind of book it was, but it says, if your voice held no power, they wouldn't try to silence you. And I thought, my God, this is what's happening, right? So I went on, and I stood up and continuing the tour. And because I decided I can do two things. I can be a victim, I'm being canceled, I'm being threatened, and all that kind of stuff. Or I can just stand up and thematize exactly what's happening as a documentary maker. And that's what I did with the second film, Paradigma. It's about polarization, the left-right thinking, but then I was from the left liberal, so I needed to ask a lot of questions to myself as well, because I was 40 years at the time. And basically I believed in a narrative which wasn't exactly the narrative I should believe in, So I was 40, and then my ego was asking myself, I believed in the left politics for 40 years, and now I need to, say I was wrong. I saw the world through glasses which were, bubbled, or with dogmas, and so that was probably the hardest part for me to free myself, to look into the mirror and decide and accept that I was not open enough, and that's where the whole story started, actually.
Yeah, and there's so many people going through a similar experience, no matter where they are on a political, like, left-right spectrum. They're just
Yeah,
rethinking things, because
yeah,
these institutions are not static. They're under change, they're being changed. And so I would say, like, the worst thing you could do is to just stay stuck to that and just listen to the TV and just go along with the sheep in the crowd. You know, the people
mm,
that are asking questions are the ones that are actually thinking for themselves. And you know, I should just give a little bit of context. So I've seen 4 of your movies. I haven't seen all of them yet. I definitely will at some point. I'll keep chipping away, but I've seen that The Uncertainty is Settled, The Return to Eden, Primordial Code, and The Burning Essence, which is the recent one. It just came out a few weeks ago. So
mm,
those are my 4. I know I got plenty more to catch up on, but I mean, it's crazy to me that, well, I guess I shouldn't say it's crazy. I'm unfortunately not surprised that the movie you made, The Uncertainty is Settled, ruffled so many feathers, because it really is. You aren't making any statements in that movie. I watched it this morning. You are
mm,
completely asking questions, open-minded, covering both sides, and being, like, very curious. And so,
yeah,
I've met enough people from Germany and from Berlin to know that, unfortunately, that is very similar to the place I'm from in the United States, in the West Coast, Seattle, Portland area. pretty similar type of people that unfortunately tend to just go along with, what they're fed through the media, and they think more emotionally than logically sometimes. And so that's how it is, and that's what we're up against right now, because I know that you're not trying to like change people, but I think you and I both can agree that we're trying to help people think about these things in a more open-minded, like logical way. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, yeah. I always say to my cameraman, we are not um, the we're not the guidance. We're not the guides. We are the door to the guides. We're not. We're just opening a road which has been grown by thorns. This could be dangerous, and we are just the gardener clearing the road at least to go, your way, whatever way that is, but we are not the way. We are not saying you should go there, but we just, show people that at least there is a road, right? But it was grown. Um, so yeah, but it's a very difficult process because I was there as well, and what I said, I was very left liberal, and I think I'm still, but the whole landscape changed somehow. It flipped somehow, and I don't call myself left liberal anymore, but I have the same. I'm the same person, and I'm standing for exactly the same things as I did before. But I'm looking at the things a little bit more with an open mind and with less dogmas, I guess, because the dogma at that time was, you're left, you're from the left tribe, and we should defend ourselves against the right tribe. All right. And that's a misunderstanding, I guess, because I see, when you talk about left right, I feel I'm more happy and comfortable with the conservatives right now because they are more left liberal as the left liberal. And with that, I mean, we have a society, and we thrown as much as possible perspectives in it, and let's see what's the good idea. And it's not about, oh, but that idea came from the left, so we're not touching it. No, it's not an idea from the left or the right. It's just a good idea, right? And I mean, it's a good idea to not kill people. So, and you can say, oh, that sounds very Trumpish to stop the war in Ukraine. But it is just not a good idea to kill people, and it's not about which tribe I belong. And I think for a long time we were captured and kidnapped by tribalism. It's a kind of puberty, right? That when you're growing to an adult, you're becoming your puberty, and you're disliking everything outside your tribe, uh, even though if whether that's a good idea. And but growing up means that you can step out of your tribe and dare to ask questions also to your own tribe. For, hey, are we doing right here? And exactly that is what I did, and the uncertainty is settled, and it became, you know, when I look back, it became a funny story, just asking questions, because it's a very interesting case journalistically that there are people and Nobel Prize winners were saying, we climate change is very bad, and we will drown and burn, and our kids will drown and burn. And the same Nobel Prize winners from the other side are saying, well, there's not so much going on. It's a very natural flux. this is journalistically a very interesting case, right? And a real left liberal should take that case. And so I was very naive, I guess, to ask these questions because I didn't know what kind of consequences were, should come after me. But I'm so happy I did it because that was my wake up call, to step out of that tribalism and to just grow up. That's what we should do.
And you find that the right people, the people that you want to have in your, your circle, your tribe of people who support you, are the ones that are going to, even if they disagree, they support your right to ask questions and maybe give them a new perspective on thinking about things. And I think that's just a sign of a more mature mind, a more truth-seeking mind, and the type of people I want to be surrounded
Yeah,
with, for sure. So it
yeah,
sort of, it helps you in both ways, even if there are hard times there as well. And I've never been standing on a stage with people telling me I suck before, but on social media, a lot of everyone who's speaking out in some sense will
yeah,
get some spectrum of that, and so there's lots of
yeah.
different ways that you receive that negative criticism, but the way that you sort of view that situation is important. And I think that for me, just I've definitely brought up lots of things that people around me, whether it be my family or my Twitter followers, disagree with me on. I've gotten to the point where it motivates me even more sometimes if I'm
Hmm.
getting
Hmm.
negative feedback, because it really challenges me and pushes me to sharpen my case, so I can give them this case and go find better people to interview for the podcast and just like do a better job as that middleman. So I think it's all about just turning the negative into a positive. And
Yeah.
that's a big part of our job is. And I would say, what is our job? Like for me, one of the reasons why I loved your film so much is because I I think that you do a great job playing the. I mean, it's not a character; it's yourself. It's your real self, and this is what I do as well. I just like being the curious idiot, that goes to talk to the
Yeah.
smart people, and
Yeah.
and help show the people who are following me, who are also my fellow idiots who don't know what we're doing. But I
Hmm.
feel like I have a good sense for finding the people who know what the truth is, and finding people who have some good value to share. And that is definitely in your movies. Like the last one I watched before jumping on here was the Return to Eden. You were walking around Africa with Alan Savory. Talk about like a
Oh
good
yeah.
voice and a good person to just fill people's brains with this guy's message. And for anyone out there who hasn't heard of him, he is one of the legends in the regenerative agriculture space. Just this idea that we can regenerate the land using livestock. Um, these are such incredible ideas. Are you aware of Joel Salatin?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
It's great as well.
I got him on my podcast a few months ago, and that was just like such a powerful moment for me. Like, wow, this guy is a true. It feels so good to just introduce him and shut up and just let this guy talk. And just like as I'm watching him talk, I'm like, oh man, I can't wait for people to hear this. This is so amazing, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this
That's
is
great. Yeah.
it's such a powerful niche that I'm sure you would agree that we there can't be too many people out there doing this, and
Hmm.
people just need to know they don't need to be an expert on things to
No,
provide
that's
great value to the world.
that's the thing. You shouldn't, because that's why I start making these films, is because there were media reports about climate change, but they were also speaking. All of the journalists were speaking so intelligence. So I couldn't relate with that journalist at all. And the problem is when a journalist is in front of a scientist, and he is trying to impress the subject as well with his questions. So he's asking very intelligent, complex questions in order that the subject knows that you are an intelligent journalist and you know what you're talking about. So what does the subject do? He's talking intelligent back, and nobody understands a thing what they're saying in the media. So I was missing this normal simple questions like, what is CO2? I don't get it, right? And no journalist dare to ask that question because it's almost stupid, right? Then they say, oh, you don't know what CO2 is? Well, it's changing our climate, blah blah blah. But I think that's the most fun, to play the idiot and asking these simple, childish, infantile questions about how the world is functioning. And being a child again in a world you just discovered yesterday, this is also always my approach. Like, oh man, I was 40 and the whole world seems to be completely different as I thought. So I need to be child again, open eyes and wondering, and and for me that it's so fun to do it, because it seems to be that the whole world is a puzzle, and we are trying to see. We are not activists against climate change or COVID, or we are just trying to figure out what is the bigger puzzle where we're living in between, right? And where are we fitting in the puzzle, and can we change the image of the puzzle? And we are just in the beginning of that awareness process, which has been activated. By me, it was 2016, but I think COVID activated a lot of that awareness process by a lot of people, and people saw suddenly that the world was different as they thought it was. And so yeah, I think this is the most beautiful time to be alive, because we are sort of reborn. It has the feeling of being reborn, right? That you finally woke up and you start to learn the world again as a child, because questions like, is the world flat, round, or is the triangle? I don't know. Let's find out, right? And these are fun questions, and at the end, it's not so important whether you found out if you believe in the world is round or triangle or flat, but the way to that question leads you to so many other topics. And I think it's pretty cool to be in.
And I love how you implement that in your movies as well. There are a lot of times where you'll have just this really crazy, mind-blowing interview with a person, and the next scene you're just like in a sauna, just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Where you're really, you can tell your viewers are feeling this way. So you're feeling that way too, where you're all going through this process together. It's incredible, because we really are. And this is, I couldn't agree more with your framing of it. It's like we're a child going through a rebirth process, realizing that the whole system that we're inside, the whole world, everything that we've been so sure about our whole lives was just a lot of times inverted, And I'm just like you. I definitely came from like the very left ideology until roughly like 2021, 2020,
Mm.
2021 was kind of what woke me up. But funny enough, it wasn't even really COVID that got me. It was just,
Ah.
stumbling into the money rabbit hole, the rabbit hole of like, what is money? What is fiat
Mm.
money? What is the Federal Reserve, the central banks? And
Mm.
ultimately, it was like just Bitcoin. I read this book called The Bitcoin Standard. I don't know how much you've looked into Bitcoin, but for me, um, that was my entrance. And I know a lot of
Mm.
people who have taken a similar route, because when you look at the money side of things, you realize that there are a lot of incentives for the very small percentage of just evil people out there who want to control everything and want to destroy nature and just play God. When the money is broken and we live in this central banker ruled fiat system, as we call it, all of these inverted realities will start coming through because there's no longer like a true measuring stick of truth where money is
Mm.
actually exchanging in a real way. And it's a whole, definitely an interesting rabbit hole. I'm not sure if you've looked into Bitcoin at all, but um, to me, that was what, got me thinking, like, wow, this is quite interesting. Like, this is why, it seems like we're being told the exact opposite of the truth from all these authorities, and all of the things that I grew up believing. And like you said, on the left side, we really grow up really caring for the environment and having a certain set of beliefs sort of to support that. And
Mm.
to me, like, as I've figured out that these like proposed solutions and problems around the environment are really quite bullshit. One of them being, eating meat is bad, farmers are bad. This was a big one for me. As I learned more about that and learned that that's completely nonsense, it's sort of opened the door to like a lot of these other solutions being proposed are nonsense too. And one of the ones I threw at you in our group chat, I'm not sure if you had a chance to look into it. I did see that it was a brief part of one of your movies. I think it was the uncertainty is settled. I can't remember.
No,
Or no,
return
I think it was
to
Return to
Eden, I
Eden.
guess.
Actually, you
Yeah,
brought
yeah.
up geoengineering, and
Mm.
that has been my primary rabbit hole for the last 6 months or so,
Mm.
because it is such a perfect encapsulation of how, we're told that there's, you know, the climate change is going to kill everybody. Us humans, we need to fix it. We need to get in there and change nature to save the planet. And so,
Yeah.
and so it turns into this crazy story the more you learn about it, where, you know,
Yeah.
almost everyone at this point has read some headline, and I'll just give you like a brief overview. I'm not sure, and I'm curious how much of this you've gone down as well, because like I was telling you, it's very in line with the stuff you're talking about in your movies,
Yeah.
especially the
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
the, the
Yeah.
most recent one, The Burning Essence. Um, Almost everyone out there has seen some headline on the internet about how Bill Gates is investing in some, company that's going to block the sun and, spray particulates into the air to block the sun so we can cool the planet and save us from global warming. But it's always framed as a theoretical. It's always framed like, oh, we might have to do this if things get really bad. We may have to step in and do this. Uh, in what I've learned from the more of my research I've done is that the lie is in that framing. They've actually already been doing this, and this is why we're seeing so many crazy weather events, is because these heavy metals are being pumped into the sky. Meanwhile, everyone is so trained to just shut their brain off the word they hear, the bad C word, chemtrails,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it is like the quintessential crazy conspiracy word. If you say that, you're insane. No one listens to you. But they're doing
Yeah.
this, and this is very well documented. It's in all sorts of reports. It's, like I said,
It's
Bill Gates
there.
is
Yeah.
investing straight into it. We've got David Keith, who was had a clip in your movie at Harvard. They're all full steam ahead on this and have been for decades. And so this is
Yeah.
why when we see this constant haze in the sky now, is because they're spraying the shit out of it with all these chemicals. And people are starting to take samples of their soil and their water. I just had a message from a farmer on Twitter who has been posting about this. He tested his soil and his water, and he's finding off the charts aluminum in the soil that's not coming from anywhere but the sky. So
Hmm.
that's been just, I mean, talk about a crazy inverted world where, on the left side, people are still thinking, environmentalist, oh, they're taught to love Bill Gates and Al Gore and Greta and these sort of characters that are propped up as the saviors, when really they
Mm.
are the ones, at least Bill Gates for sure, is in fact creating a massive problem here that is destroying the environment. So it's been quite interesting to see how both sides of the climate debate, in my eyes, are wrong. And I've been ranting for a while. I'm excited to hear your take on this, but from my
Mm.
view, there's the pro climate change, like we need to do something about it, people, completely clueless about geoengineering, the fact that that's actually causing the destruction in the environment and the death of the wildlife. And then there's the anti-denier climate change people saying it's all nonsense. Humans cannot change the climate. It's all fraud, and just ignore it. I think that both of those sides are missing the true story, which is there is man-made climate change, but it has nothing to do with us driving cars or using a plastic straw. It's the lunatics that are actually, doing the 5G mast. They're pumping frequency into the air. They're spraying it with chemicals, and they're clear about what they're doing. It's a huge mess that people haven't really figured out that true middle ground yet. And this has been a long shill that should be a movie that you make in the future.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's very interesting because exactly what you said. It's not a secret. It is indeed man-made climate change, but not by us, the people, right? It's like the plastic problem, right? It's when I'm ordering something, and my package is in the mail, and I'm opening my package, and then I hear on the news we should not be using so much plastic. I said, I'm not fucking asking for this plastic, for when I unpack my package, 30 layers of plastic before I found at the end. So I'm not producing plastic. So, but we're somehow feel blamed that we are unpacking something which is plastic, but we didn't ask for it. We didn't produce plastic, and that's the same with climate change. It is absolutely man-made, and I'm a lot of it is man-made, and the whole geoengineering, it's been done for decades, right? Geoengineering is as old as, I think, Willem Reich started with trying to change the climate, let it rain in America, but it started to, when I did the scene in Return to Eden, I emailed so many people, Dave Keith as well, but he didn't want to show up in the film, of course, and I actually bumped onto a site called Rain on Demand. It was they were from California, and I asked them to be on the film, and I should travel to California as well for it. So they were working with farmers, and they could create rain on demand. I thought that this is ridiculous, really, but they never reacted again back. And then a month later, they didn't exist anymore. Why, I don't know, but so can you imagine rain on demand? And so the technology is there, and yes, they're spraying chemicals. They are chemicals for the human system, right? For the biological system, whether that's a plant, an animal, or a human. And what you see is after the 1975, something changed in the kerosene of planes, right? There were three elements they added into the kerosene of the planes without pilots knowing it. And from 1975 worldwide, there are so many more chronic diseases which are the doctors make that correlation with what they are spraying in the air, but the mainstream medical environment, they don't want to hear it. So there are a lot of things, and then you should ask yourself, why are they doing it? I mean, the elites are living under the same clouds, right? Because they are getting chronically ill as well. And what I thought was, because I was reading about the sun, and what they do is they try to block the sun. And the problem with blocking the sun is that you cannot block the sun really with geoengineering, with vaccinating the clouds, right? It's very local, and it's very rapidly away as well. The next day could be clear as well. So you should do it every day to be successful in reducing, a global warming. So what they do now is that they will put up particles in the stratosphere, which is 40 kilometers up. And the thing is that when you put particles in the stratosphere, it will be spreading. It will not stay local. It will spread around the globe. So, like the volcano eruption, when the ashes will reach the stratosphere, the world will be a little bit darker. There was a volcanic eruption in Indonesia. I think it was the 600 or the 1680.
Mount Pinatubo. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and the whole world was in darkness for a year, and they had the summer without a sun in 1816, I guess, or 1618. Yeah. So, and that's what they do. So they are spraying particles in the stratosphere, which is a step higher, because they need one person need to push the button and decide whether we will get sun in the coming months or not. And then you have a global government. You need a global government with one guy pushing the button, of course. And that is perfectly in line with all my films. But what I wanted to explain is that I read about the sun, and why are they doing it? And in my opinion, and why is Bill Gates behind it as well? Because he's not particularly the person who's saving the planet in regards to CO2 reduction or something. What I think is that they're blocking the sun to keep us down as humans, right? As we saw the burning essence, it's the same principle. They wanted to keep us down so they can control us a bit easier. And the reason, therefore, is because the sun, we lived for 150,000 years with the sun as our best friend, because we knew we need the sun for our health. And the last 50 years, the sun became our threat, our enemy, right? So we had sun cream, we had sunglasses, and medically speaking, your eyes are like sun collectors, solar panels. And when they're collecting sunlight, they create and produce elements in our body which decide your circadian rhythm, and that's your biorhythm of the day. And your biorhythm is that your body knows when you need to wake up and it's morning, and your body knows when you go to sleep when it's night. And that's very important, because the last 50 years, that whole biorhythm of people is completely disturbed, and that's causing chronic diseases, or it is on the base of chronic diseases. So that system is shut. When you suppress that, your biorhythm is confused. And in my opinion, that's a very good reason why they are doing the sun blocking. It's not about climate change. It's not about poisoning the people. It might be about poisoning the crops, because the crops should go in closed units, not on the open field anymore. So that's the whole geoengineering enterprise has nothing to do with reducing climate change or global warming, but has to do with control, and those who control the weather will control the world. It's a phrase of, I think it was 80 years back or 100 years back, and I think that's where the world leaders are heading to, because they know when we control the weather, we control the people and everything. But I think that the whole sun blocking thing is very interesting, because when you see, and there is a very strong correlation with chronic diseases starting at the time when we start to see the sun as our enemy. We're using
exactly, yeah,
our skin, because we need the sun. The sun is part of our biological system, and without sun, we will die, basically. So I think that's a possible scenario why they are doing all these efforts and they say it's climate change because that's the tool, that's the tool they can use to undergo so many operations in the world that people just accept blindly because most of the people are afraid. You should not underestimate what fear does in people's mind. And I often explain it as an example. When Ben, I'm a doctor, you're my patient, and I say, Ben, you're not going to live long. I think 3 months because we found something very bad in your body, and it's uncurable. So you think you will be dead in 4 months, and then halfway I will call you and I said, we checked it again, but we saw the tumor and it's not very bright for you, so I give you 2 months. And then a week before you will pass away, as the doctor said, I call you again and I said, Ben, I have a new technique and I can heal you 100%. I guarantee you 100%. It's a new technique out of Canada, but I need to amputate your leg, and you will be running to the hospital, to be amputated your leg. And after the doctor did it, you will thank the doctor because he's your hero. You think he saves yourself, but nobody dares to ask the question, wait a minute, maybe the doctor knew 4 months before that he needed a leg in order he could sell that leg for, the double price or something. It's a stupid question, of course, and it's a stupid example, but it's the same, principles are being used in climate change, make people afraid with the fear of death of climate change or whatever, and then become hero of the climate change because you can solve it. But it has nothing to do with climate change. It has to do with that you walk the steps they want you to walk. And once you see it everywhere, not only in climate change, but also in COVID, in the war, and these kind of things. And I think nowadays we're living in a time where our consciousness is becoming much more active, and that has to do with the intensity of the sun. That's why they are blocking the sun as well. And we need that intensity of the sun for, it's our pineal gland, our brain, and it's connected to the Schumann resonance. It's the vibration of the earth. And the vibration of the earth is connected with the intensity of the sun. Now, what you see is that the intensity of the sun is rising, is being more intense as ever before. And so the Schumann resonance is being more intensive as well. So our pineal gland, and that's our consciousness, is more intensive. And I think that's why the elites are in panic, and they know, and they do everything they can, and they grasp 3-4 wars, climate change, terror attacks, a new pandemic. So to try to make people in fear, but what statistics are showing that, and that's a very nice correlation as well, is that the fall of every empire, like the Incas, like the Mayas, the Romans, the Egyptians, they're all correlating with the intensity of the sun. And you should look that up. It's very easy to look that up. The time table of the intensity of the sun and the timetable of the falling of all great empires. So I think the panic is there by the elites, and I think the key to overcome and overwin this whole situation is to be fearless, and not in every aspect, of course, but in the aspect of what the governments are saying. So yeah, it's like a game, I guess. It's really a game, and I cannot explain it in other words, then it's a game, and we are playing it, right? And you should play it smart. And it's not smart, I think, to go to the streets and do a demonstration or being violent. I think the best weapon to do is to stay with yourself and try to make your own environment, as small as it is, let's say your own family, your own garden, make it as beautiful as you want, and you have nothing to do with the outside world. I think that's a good start. And they are afraid of people who are, becoming more independent and autonomous, actually. So whatever they do, call it geoengineering, creating new pandemics, or creating wars, I think we are in a state of mind that we're not accepting it anymore. And they can do it, but we're not listening. That's I think we're growing in numbers, and a very good. It's very interesting for me to see, because after COVID, or before COVID, I didn't was physically present at premieres, because COVID learned me that in a digital way you can achieve much more, much easier. And I stopped screening the films in person when cinemas started to ask too much questions to my viewers, like you should wear a mask, or you should be vaccinated, or have a QR code. And I refused it, and I said, no, then all my films, not in a cinema anymore, and I will do it online. That's much easier. And I didn't. I did it for 3 years, and now this film, Primordial Code: The Burning Essence, was the first film I went out again. So I went to premieres, and I came from, like The Uncertainty Has Settled. I was screening that film for 30 people maximum in cinemas, and there I was 3 weeks ago. It was every screening was sold out within a day, and I had 7 screenings. It was 600 people at night, and it exploded, and what happened, right? So I think we are growing in numbers so fast and so rapidly, and there is absolutely something going on in our consciousness. And that gave me a lot of hope, and to see all these people, like as we discussed, being a child again, and wanted to have that question. And I think that's great.
Man, so much there. I'm so resonating with what you're talking about right now. That was it in the same city? Was it also in Berlin that you did these screenings, or was it somewhere different?
With the last film, I did the screenings in the Netherlands.
Okay.
But The Uncertainty Has Settled, I screened in the Netherlands as well.
Okay, and it was a roughly similar difference.
Yeah, absolutely. It's absolutely similar. Yeah, and it was, across Europe, it was absolutely everywhere the same, and that's unbelievable. Like now, you're from. I mean, I don't know where you're from, but you're in Mexico. I'm in near Berlin, somewhere in a village. I mean, how on earth is that possible, right? I mean, it is great that a lot of people worldwide are seeing my films, and because I didn't realize it. Of course, my network was growing, but everything happened behind the screen, so I didn't have a real idea of how many people there were, and then I stood in. We had a sold out cinema for 2 nights at a row in Utrecht, in the Netherlands. It's in the middle of, in the heart of the Netherlands. It's a big city. We sold out the biggest Kinopolis cinema in the Netherlands within a day. Meanwhile, the normal films in cinemas, they're not making that much popularity anymore. So, and 5 years back, that same cinema should should have canceled me. Oh no, we cannot do it because Marijn is very controversial and we lose our subsidies. But now, 600 people 2 times at a row, they will lose a lot of money when they cancel me. So I think that's a great system that we at this time are stronger than the other side, and they need to go along with us, because otherwise they're losing their whatever they have. And this is a very interesting shift happening, that people at the end will choose, I think, the most strongest side, and and we are growing exponentially. We are absolutely exploding, and I witnessed that because 3 years ago, I had really a good idea, and now, man, it blew my mind. Yeah, it made me kind of mainstream in the alternative world, which is quite odd, to be honest, because
it's kind of an oxymoron, but a good kind. We want more of these it's like you're independent in your creative process and the message you're spreading, but the independent is becoming the new mainstream. We saw this in the US with the recent election, with the Joe Rogan's podcast. That made a huge difference in the results, whether you love it or hate it. One candidate embraced this decentralization of content, and the other one just stuck to the legacy media for dear life and just prayed that it would work, and it didn't. So fascinating times.
I think what we should be very careful with is that we're also living in a time where people are very sensitive for we are coming from a world where we need leaders. We think we need leaders. And then COVID happened, and there weren't any leaders anymore. So people are a little bit homeless, right? Homeless in hope or in whatever. And they grasp very easily to gurus, right? And this is a time when gurus will arise as well. Wrong people with wrong intentions, who are grasping the stage to win unstable souls, I guess. I think this is, what you said. We're coming from that. We are becoming mainstream in the alternative media. It's tricky because we are running away from that mainstream media, and now we're building the same structures again, right? We don't build them already, but there's a danger that we're building it together again, exactly the same structures we are running away from, right? So because I see it everywhere. When I am in the Netherlands or in Germany, I'm being invited to the same podcasts every time again, because we are friends. It's within my network, and you don't see many other guests in these big podcasts. So it's a circle. The inner circle will be there, and other people don't feel any access because they the old structure is in the alternative structure as well still. And I think we should be very careful in what we're building up, and that costs time. It's like and it's organic. We tend to make plans and programs and excels to have business plans or whatever, have a PR company doing your stuff. And I don't believe in all that kind of stuff. I just believe in you should do what you think you should do, what you feel you want to do in this world, without thinking too much of what is my benefit. Of course, your benefit is that you're doing the thing you love, but 10 years back, I was very worried about my pension. I don't pay any pension, so I need to make more money in order to survive when I'm getting old. And nowadays, I don't care. I don't care whether I can survive next year. I will see, and it will be fine. So this is some sort of organic way of doing whatever you think you need to do, and for the benefit of the whole holistic program. And I don't care what next year will be, whether I have money or not, or whether the world still exists or not, because we cannot make any plans or future programs when we don't know if the dollar will exist tomorrow. I mean, how can you make plans? So that was a relief for me to see that, and I think, wait a minute, I do not want to live in fear or in tension anymore. I'll just do whatever I want to do, and I do it with honesty against myself, and then you're honest to others as well, of course. And that's all I have, and I think this is the new world, not creating networks of friends, because then you're, like Alan Savory says, you're being trapped in institutional stupidity, right? That you have a network of people with all interests and you support each other, but then you're more busy with supporting the other and keeping the friends as your friend than doing 100% exactly what you want to do. And I think we are just biological systems, just like a tree. A tree just grows, it doesn't think. And it just grows on the energy it has, it's receiving. And we're not much more than a tree. And I think that's a cool principle. It's very frightening as well to let go the fear, right? From, but I need to be sure that next year I have work but it's much more fun to have an adventurous life and say, I believe in the people and I believe in myself, and let's see if the conditions are still there tomorrow. And then great things will happen. And on an Excel sheet, you cannot make great things happen. That's not convincing me. And I'm very much into nature stuff, and I'm into the nature, and I'm comparing nature systems with political systems as well. And what you see is that humans are exactly working the same as how trees are working in a forest. But once you are starting to manage the forest, then you very rapidly overregulating, and the forest will be desert. And that's the same happening with the people, and people are organic as well. So people don't know if they are alive tomorrow, and a tree doesn't either. And I think that could be a frightening scenario, but it could also be an adventurous scenario, right? Let's see what the conditions are tomorrow. And I think that's a new world we should be embracing much more, that when we want to have real freedom and real liberty, we should be running away from certainty and running away from security as well, because somehow we changed we cognitively changed the notion of certainty and freedom. We think they are the same, right? When you are certain, you're free, but they are the opposite. When you're free, you don't have certainty. There are a lot of risks attached to freedom. But when you're certain, you need to give away freedom. Otherwise, you cannot be certain. And I think we humans are born to live in freedom, live with adventures, and with uncertainty.
Oh boy, I have so many tangents I want to go on after that we have to do another episode in the future. Some things I
Yeah.
agree with and some things I disagree with, actually. So I very much look forward to revisiting this. I'm definitely going to be re-listening and coming back with some thoughts because there's so much to dig into there. And I love that you're exploring all these questions and just, like you said, fearlessly going through it. Why don't we wrap this up? I know you got to run here soon. Two quick things I want at the end. First is how much can you tell me about the next movie, the third movie in the Primordial Code series? Because I know you
Oh
just
yeah.
came out with the second, so I'm sure I'm not sure how much you have even in mind for it if you're still just completely focused on number two. And secondly, let us know how all of my followers can go find you, watch your movies, and support your work.
Yeah, great. Yeah, the third film will be the closing of the trilogy, and it is really a puzzle coming together, a puzzle piece coming together. I will aesthetically, it's gonna be. I will reach the levels of almost heaven, I guess, because I wanted to make this a film which is bringing you in a completely different, as a completely different human, and so in cinematically speaking, it should be as beautiful as I can. For the content, of course, it's very hard to explain where I'm heading to because I don't know where I'm heading to, but everything fits together in a puzzle, and it is all. It is for. I'm not believing that I can show people the puzzle, but I can present the structures where people see the puzzle. So everything which has been set in 1 and 2 will come together in a very visual film, and I'm a little bit afraid of the length of the film because like we notice in this podcast as well, every time is too short. But I will try within the 2 hours, and it's gonna be a real adventure. And I'm not sure yet. It's a risky thing as well, to film, because I will visit the things physically as well, and I'm not sure if I can do it, but at least I will try it, and yeah, I will. So it's very vague what I'm saying, but that's the time where I am right now, because it's very hard to, the great part of making this documentaries like I do is what I said. I start with a focus, and I don't have a clue where it's ending because I'm very flexible. I'm stick to the focus, but I'm very flexible where this story is leading to. Maybe I have an end in my head, but probably that end will not be reached because I will be directed to another end. So it's kind of it's very, very hard to explain what exactly the film will be, but it is 1 and 2 together, and then in a very cinematic journey, which is taking the viewers hand by hand, and so I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, and people can can see all my work on my website. It's www.marijnpoels.com, which pronounced as marijnpoels.com. And there you'll find my YouTube channel and my Rumble channel as well, my Twitter and everything. And you can, hang around there and see what where you're interested in. All my films are free. They're on the website as well. Even though I do have a YouTube account, I think YouTube is very annoying. lately because they are suppressing a lot of views, and they're very honest in it. But they are, yeah, they're repressing it. Rumble is doing fine, but I like to stay as much as possible on all the networks because I'm not against YouTube or something. It's just, that they have rules, right? And I need to attach to that. And I just want to reach as much as people possible. My films are on Twitter as well. So there are so many ways in getting on my work and seeing my work. And I'm looking forward to get all these people on my website.
Yeah, and I really just can't recommend it enough. I told you I just stumbled across it a few weeks ago on a social media network. I should throw a quick shill out there for this one called Nostr, which not sure if you've heard of that before, but you'll hear more about it soon. It is an extremely interesting new social network that runs on a protocol instead of a
Huh?
platform. So it's completely uncensorable. There's no algorithm, no
Oh,
CEO.
wow.
It's built like email, where as you have the different apps you can use to access the data, but there's no CEO of email. It's the same way. And there's also Bitcoin integration, so people can send you Bitcoin for your post. So when you post your movie, people can just send it directly to you. So
Oh, wow.
super interesting thing to check out. I would highly recommend that. I can throw you some resources on it. But outside of that, just for people who want to support you and support your work, like we mentioned, you are completely fan funded, completely open source. I saw you have a Bitcoin address on your website, which is excellent because this was originally a Bitcoin podcast before I just went off the rails on all sorts of other stuff. But I know I have a lot of Bitcoiner listeners, so make sure to go throw him some sats. I know I am going to because I can't wait for this third movie. I know it's going to be amazing, and I can't wait to follow you along the journey, my friend. So thank you so much for coming by. It's been a huge pleasure having you on, and looking forward to more art from you, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a great chat, and always nice to have stories from people like you. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Until next time, we're going to have another one in the future. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely.